Five, four, three, two, one. And it goes without saying, fuck imperialism and colonialism. Today is July 1st, and for those of you that don't live in Canada, that is Canada Day. Today I'm wearing orange in protest of canceling Canada Day, because I don't know if you've heard, but if you're living in Canada, you've definitely heard even yesterday, last night, like the day before Canada Day, where people are already calling to cancel it, they discovered another 182 bodies at an old residential school. And basically, what a residential school is a school where, sorry, a little voice a little raspy. But basically, back in the day, when the French Canadians and the English Canadians that were coming here and were taking over land and making Canada British North America, um, there were, as you know, indigenous people who lived on the lands. And as their way of assimilating and making them not savage anymore, they the Catholic Church ripped these children from their homes and put them in these residential schools. And there were, like with slavery and the Holocaust, war, we knew horrible things happened, but what we see on TV or reading books cannot even be like, it's just the tip of the iceberg of what really happened. So, these children weren't allowed to speak their native tongue. If they were caught, they'd get beaten. And of course, all these people that have survived said there were so many accusations of sexual assault and abuse, physical, mental, emotional, all these crazy things. And uh, I think back in 2015, around the time Justin Trudeau just um, became like our prime minister, I think 2015, 2016, he did apologize for residential schools. But then again, right after that, he tried to do like the North Key pipeline, which literally went through indigenous lands. I think last year they ended up dropping it because of all the protests and everything. But he wants to apologize for residential schools and say that he cares, but then he goes and does that. Not to mention, like, it's been months and people that are on these indigenous reserves, they don't have clean drinking water. And even if you want to buy stuff, like in residential areas, like a bottle of water is $60, so it's freaking ridiculous. So it's performative activism, whereas you're the prime minister, you actually can do something and you're not. Like when last year George Floyd was killed and all these Black Lives Matter protests, and we're seeing that no one really cared about COVID anymore, and they started killing Black people, and then all the White House people wear their kente cloths and bent a knee, but they legitly had power to do something, whereas the people that are out in the protests, they don't, so that's why they're protesting. So of course, people have been canceling Canada Day, and I'm wearing orange shirt in protest. Um, and a lot of people aren't doing fireworks. People weren't going to do fireworks regardless because apparently it was supposed to rain all week, but it only rained like, I believe, Tuesday, a little bit of Monday, a little bit of yesterday. But yeah, this year we won't be doing fireworks. I think it's time to mourn. Especially after last year, we've seen tragedy after tragedy. The amount of people that got sick and died from COVID, and all these other extraneous factors, people losing their jobs, depression, a lot of things were going on. And in case you didn't know before, you knew now that the world is not this beautiful, luxurious place that we all thought it was. It's kind of this nightmare if you don't have power and things like that. Um, so I know that um, it's a little crazy, but I'm gonna read from DW, where it's like Canada, more unmarked graves found near Indigenous residential school run by church. So Canada's First Nations has found a third group of unmarked graves at an assimilation school in recent weeks. This time, 182 human remains have been detected. Previous discoveries amounted to nearly 1,000 dead. Yeah, they found 751 like last week. So a First Nations group in Canada and British Columbia on Wednesday said it found 182 bodies using radar detection equipment near the site of a former residential school for Indigenous children, St. Eugene's Mission near Cranbrook, operated by the Catholic Church from 1912 until the early 1970s. The Lower Kootenay Band said that in the news release that the search yielded remains in unmarked graves of 90 centimeters to 1.2 meters deep, approximately 3 to 4 feet. It is believed that the remains belong to a band of the Tuxana Nation, sorry if I butchered that, and other nearby First Nation people. Wednesday's discovery follows two similar discoveries at another church run school in Canada in the recent weeks. So the big numbers we've had, so the first that they discovered was, I believe, 251, and then last week, 750. So 251 in Kamloops. The 751, I believe, was in Saskatoon, and now there have been other numbers where it was like 100 or 50, but I think this is the next biggest number, the 182 in British Columbia. Last week, 715 bodies were discovered in Marival in Saskatchewan. Yeah, so there. Canada's residential schools for cultural genocide, which is basically what they did. Until the late 20th century, the children of the First Nations were forcibly enrolled in 139 residential reform schools. They were physically and emotionally abused by teachers and principals who refused them the right to speak their language and practice their culture. A commission of inquiry established that Canada had committed cultural genocide and conceded 4,000 died in the process of forced assimilation. So the 4,000, that number is definitely not accurate. It's probably way, way more. Last Friday, Justin Trudeau addressed the issue, calling it a harmful government policy. Um, yeah, so a lot of these things coming from imperialism and colonialism, we own you. This is our land now. We know best. So we're going to take away your culture and make you more European, make everything more Eurocentric. And it just breaks my heart because even before, like, I kind of discussed this on my last podcast, but when I was learning about Louis Riel and all these crazy things, I forgot what the period was, like the New World. It's been so long now, but basically in the 1600s, like when all these revolutionary things were happening, there were all these crazy things that they did to these people who were literally just living their life. And I'm pretty sure they opened their doors to these foreigners, and look where it got them. A crazy thing that I discovered last week was the import model, Dannie Riel, who was really big, like in the 2010s. And I had a really big crush on her because, Tumblr. And like, I remember just back in the day, everyone hyped her up. I always realized her name was Dannie Riel. And there is like this French Canadian who, from what I remember, he worked with the indigenous people to do like trapping and stuff. But I don't know if it was like he forced them or that he was one of the ones that actually wanted to work with these people. And what I was taught in school probably isn't accurate either. So I don't know if he was actually cooperative or he was more like forceful, like you're going to help me. But yeah, Danny Riel, I always wondered. I'm like, literally have the same last name as Louis Riel. Are you a descendant? But like, I thought she was just Asian. But she posted on her story. You know what? I'll just pull it up too. Uh, Yeah, she posted, I've been wanting to make this post for a while, but I've been overwhelmed on how to start. Out of nowhere, I don't feel comfortable trying to educate, but least I can do is give a spotlight. My Indian name is Wab Anug, morning star. This means the morning sun that rises in the east, and I am of the Anishinaabe Métis descent. This makes me giggle because everyone who knows me knows I will be the first to stay up or get up. I was born and live on Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. the home of the Anishinaabe Métis, the Cree, Dakota, Dene, and Ojibwe peoples. Today is National Indigenous Peoples Day, so this was June 21st in Canada, and I want to step forward in acknowledging my Métis background and will do more to educate myself about Indigenous peoples. The pain and history of treatment of Indigenous peoples need to be brought forward and talked about in the mainstream. These issues cannot be swept under the rug any longer. Similarly, I've known I've always known my background, but like many others from my generation, MAT background was rarely talked about. Recently, I've obtained a copy of my family tree, my ancestors that played instrumental roles in laying groundwork for Métis. I won't be able to make the same impact they left, but I want to do my part and educate myself. The treatment of Indigenous peoples, not only in Canada, but in many other countries where colonization took place, needs to be brought to light. The effects of colonization creates intergenerational trauma, and other people that need to continue to seek safe spaces and allies to talk with to help heal from the past. We have come a long way, but there is still way too much to be desired. You need you need to know where you came from in order to find yourself. Life is always about learning and knowing your history. Was all about learning, and knowing your history will help shape the future you want to have. I hope this post inspires you not to look the other way when the difficult topics come up. If you don't understand, ask someone, and if you don't understand something, that is okay. Wait, if you don't understand when these difficult topics, if you don't understand, ask someone, and if you don't understand something, that is okay. That is what hashtag YouTube is for, LOL. And I've linked some short videos to help starting point and get some ideas and topics to talk about. Please repost. Anyways, so even like this big import model that everyone just wanted her for her body, she of Métis descent. And Métis, I think those are people traditionally that are mixed with European and indigenous peoples. They're like their own brand because technically I think back in the day they didn't belong to, like they were like kind of on the outside because they weren't European, but they also weren't indigenous. You know, kind of what mixed people or mulatto people go through today. Anyways, I just brought that up to show that like even in plain sight, there are all these indigenous people and they don't even know their roots because for a lot of people that was stripped from them or not talked about. And you always hear these horror stories, but I think especially in times like this, it's time for them to be acknowledged and to get their voice back and like their land and all these things. And even me being in Canada, I'm just a settler. This is not my home. I went to UTM and I know there, like they acknowledge that this land belongs to a group of indigenous people. I don't remember it now, but one of our buildings, the north building, like they literally made it like the Najibwe, whatever, and I think I can't pronounce it and I can't remember it now, but I think they named the building basically after the people or the indigenous people's lands that the building was built upon. And there's a lot of great things about Canada, but like in most of the Western world, and especially North America, to get where we are today and have the things that we have, the people that came here and took the land from the people who are already living here did some horrible things. So, do you mind? Sorry, my niece is just beside me. So, in closing, what I was saying, there are horrible things that were going on and still happening to this day, and we have to acknowledge and reconcile because here I'm just a settler. This isn't my land. This is my people. This isn't my story. So it's not for me to tell and educate people on what's happening. I can only boost the voices of the people who it's actually is their land and it's actually theirs to acknowledge. So I hope and I pray that there is justice and not in some distant future where I'm old. I mean now, an actual action because it said it was ran from 1912 to like the late 70s. So this is recent. There are a lot of people, well, at least the people that are still alive that survived the residential schools that are still alive to this day. And I think they need to speak up and the government needs to do something. And I don't necessarily mean this government, but whoever is in power in the future, they are the voices and instruments to change. And all these people that are in the Senate and these houses are like in their 30s and 40s. So I'm pretty sure their generation and the things that they grew up with is, even in the last 10 years, things have changed and been acknowledged, like the Me Too movement, Time's Up, all these crazy things, like these movements of Black Lives Matter, even this Cancel Canada Day. I'm pretty sure 30, 40 years ago, things like this would have never happened, would have been snuffed under the rug. It wouldn't be getting media coverage. And without social media, I don't think people that aren't these major governments would not have a voice. And that also goes to talk about the bill 50 and bill 51, where the government can now censor things that um, you, like if you talk bad about the government reserves the right, even in videos and podcasts, things that aren't necessarily regulated. Because before, if you were on the radio or on TV, the CRTC could regulate you for certain things, but now they're private, independent people. So, like someone like me, even talking about the government and the injustices that they did, they can censor me. So, there's a lot of things that need to be done. Um, Maybe in the next video, I'll talk about the bill because I kind of just touched on it. But I just want to let you know that I just want to let you know that I stand with you. I'm praying for you, and I hope that Indigenous people get their voices heard, justice acknowledged, and their reparations. I don't know what that looks like in this day and age, but however you see fit, and all these treaties that the government has constantly broken. I hope that in the end, one day, they will be acknowledged and there will be an actual change and fit. And these big bodies, big government can no longer stop that. So that's all I have for today, and I'm out now.